There are 18 distinct miracles recorded in the life of Moses. Most people know 3 of them. Almost nobody has read them in order. And when you do, when you sit down and trace every sign, every plague, every moment of the impossible, from the first trembling of his staff in the desert to the last act he performs before Israel crosses into a land he will never enter, you find something the text has been hiding in plain sight for 3,000 years. Not a secret, not a code, something simpler and more unsettling than that. A pattern, a single coherent argument, a case that the miracles of Moses were never really about Moses, and that the last one, the strangest, the most overlooked, the one almost no one preaches, is the key to reading everyone that came before it. Before we begin, a distinction the English translation erases. The Hebrew text uses 2 words for these events. The first is oti, the Hebrew word aleph vav tav, usually translated sign. It means a mark, a seal, evidence of covenant. The second is mofet, usually translated wonder or portent. It means something shown in advance, a preview, a foreshadowing of something larger. Your English Bible smooths these 2 words into miracles, and you lose the argument before it begins. Some of what Moses does are signs, covenant markers. Some are wonders, theological previews. And when you know which is which, the sequence starts to speak. Here is what we are going to do. We are going to read every miracle Moses performed, in the order the text gives them. We are going to notice what instrument is used, what Egyptian theology is being dismantled, what provision is being made, and what each miracle costs Moses personally, because the cost is part of the pattern. And we are going to end at the one miracle that Jesus himself quoted directly, explicitly, in a late-night conversation with a Pharisee named Nicodemus, and understand why he chose that one, out of all 18, to describe his own death. By the time we reach it, you will not be surprised. You will have seen it coming from the beginning. 18 miracles. Let's read them all, in order. Before the plagues begin, before Moses stands before Pharaoh, before any crowd of Israelite slaves watches from a distance, God gives Moses 3 signs in private, just Moses and the voice. No audience, no court, no one watching. These 3 signs are almost never preached as a unit. Most Christians don't even know the third one exists separately from the plagues, but reading them together is essential, because they are not the same kind of miracle. They are 3 demonstrations of 3 different things, and the sequence matters. God asks Moses a question. What is in your hand? Moses is holding a staff, a shepherd's staff, plain wood, worn smooth from decades of use in the Midian desert, unremarkable, the kind of object that disappears in your grip because you've held it so long. And God says, throw it on the ground. Moses throws it. The staff becomes a serpent. The Hebrew word is nachash, a serpent, the same word used in Genesis for what was in the garden. Moses runs from it. The text says he fled from it. The Hebrew barach, which means to flee, as from danger. And then God says, pick it up by the tail. Reach down and grab the tail of a live snake. Moses obeys. The serpent becomes a staff again in his hand. Read that again. Because the first thing God does is not give Moses power. The first thing God does is take the thing Moses already had, the ordinary tool of his ordinary life, and show Moses what it becomes when it touches the ground at God's command, and then require Moses to pick up the dangerous thing with his bare hand. The first sign is not about the snake. It is about the hand that has to reach down and grab it. There is a theology of courage compressed into 30 seconds of encounter. And then something strange happens in the text. The second sign, God tells Moses to put his hand inside his cloak. He does. He pulls it out. His hand is leprous, white as snow. Metzora, the word used for the skin disease that exiles an Israelite from the community. Unclean, marked. Moses holds in his own body the condition of a man cast out, the condition that in ancient Israelite law made a person ritually equivalent to the already dead. And then God says, "Put it back." He does. He pulls it out again. The hand is restored. Flesh, like a child's, clean. Here is what almost every commentary misses about this sign. Leprosy in the ancient world was not simply a medical condition. It was a theological status. A leprous person was considered ritually as one already half dead. The Talmud will later say as much explicitly. What God is giving Moses here is not a medical trick. He's giving Moses the sign of a man who carries death in his body and is still restored. A man who can be touched by the unclean and come back clean. The second sign is about carried death and resurrection, and it is given in private before Moses has done anything in public. But here is what nobody talks about. The third sign, because the first two signs are given with an explicit purpose. If they do not believe the first sign, they will believe the second. That is the text's own logic. Two witnesses, two confirmations. But then God adds a third. And if they do not believe even these two signs or listen to your voice, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. And the water that you take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. Notice what is happening here. The first two signs involve Moses' own body or his own tool, the staff he carries, the hand in his cloak. They are intimate signs, personal. But the third sign involves the Nile. To an Egyptian, the Nile was not a river. It was Hapi, the god who fed them, the source of life, the reason Egypt existed where it did. The annual flood of the Nile was a religious event. Its waters were sacred, and God is telling Moses, if all else fails, take the sacred water of Egypt and pour it on the ground, and it will become blood on dry ground, not in a container, not in a cup. Poured out onto dust, the same word used in Genesis for the ground God forms Adam from. The third sign is a preview, a mofet, a portent of what is coming for Egypt. And it is given quietly, in private, on a hillside in Midian, before Moses has even returned. Most Christians have never noticed this sign exists separately from the plagues. It does. And God placed it third. Three signs. Staff to serpent, hand to leprosy, and back, Nile water to blood. The first is about courage, the second is about carried death and restoration, the third is about judgment that will come from the most sacred source. They are not the same kind of event, and nowhere in most churches will you hear them preached as a sequence. Let's move to the plagues. Here is what almost every commentary misses. The plagues are not random. They are theological. They are a systematic demolition of the Egyptian pantheon. And Moses did not choose their order. The text is unambiguous about who did. Each plague targets a specific Egyptian deity. When you know what Egyptians believed, the sequence reads not as chaos, but as a formal argument delivered over weeks with escalating stakes. The first public plague, the Nile. Moses stretches out his staff over the waters of Egypt at God's command. The water turns to blood. Not just the Nile, all the water in Egypt, in the wooden pails, in the stone jars, in the canals and the ponds and the reservoirs. Blood. The target is Hapi, the god of flood and fertility. Osiris, whose body was associated with the Nile's water. The plague does not begin with a foreign land or an obscure idol. It begins with the most sacred natural feature of the Egyptian world and transforms its water into the color of death. The word in Hebrew is dam, the same word for both blood and the red-brown silt that came with the Nile's annual flood, which Egyptians understood as a sign of life. This plague takes the sign of life and reveals it as death. It shows Egypt what its sacred source actually contains, and Pharaoh's magicians do the same. They also turn water to blood. which is the strangest detail in the text because there is almost no water left to turn. The commentators have noticed this problem for centuries. The magicians replicate a plague using water that should not exist anymore. And Pharaoh, seeing that his own servants can produce the same result, walks away. His heart is hardened. He does not listen. This will be the pattern until it breaks. And when it breaks, the break will tell you something. The second plague, frogs. Heket, the frog-headed goddess of fertility and childbirth, one of the most beloved figures in the Egyptian pantheon. Frogs were sacred. They represented new life. They were not to be harmed. And now they are everywhere, in the ovens, in the bread, in the beds, in the bodies of the royal palace. The sacred fertility symbol has become an infestation. The magicians replicate it again. Pharaoh hardens again. And then, the detail almost nobody notices, Pharaoh calls Moses and says, "Pray that God removes the frogs, and I will let your people go." Moses says, "Name the hour. You choose when the frogs disappear, so that you will know this is not coincidence, not nature recovering on its own." Pharaoh says, "Tomorrow." And tomorrow the frogs die. All of them everywhere in heaps, and the land stinks of them. Pharaoh saw the fulfillment of what he himself scheduled. He still hardened. The third plague, gnats. Kinim in Hebrew, small insects, possibly lice, possibly gnats. The precise species has been debated for centuries. And here the pattern breaks for the first time. Moses does not warn Pharaoh this time. God tells Moses, "Strike the dust of the ground." Aaron strikes the dust, and the gnats come. All the dust of Egypt becomes gnats. The magicians try to replicate it. They cannot, and they say to Pharaoh 3 words that change the narrative entirely. Etzba Elohim, the finger of God, not Moses, not magic, something outside their system entirely. The court magicians, who had replicated the first 2 plagues, step back from the third and say, "This is beyond us. We cannot explain this." Pharaoh does not listen to them. But something has changed. The text has drawn a line. Up to here, human imitation. After here, something else entirely. The 4th plague begins a new pattern, geographic separation. The flies come to every Egyptian home. The Israelite settlement of Goshen has none. This visible line between who the plagues touch and who they skip is new. It is not coincidental. It is the text announcing that this is not random suffering. It is targeted. Pharaoh negotiates after the flies. He offers a partial deal, sacrifice in the land, not in the wilderness. Moses refuses. The flies leave. Pharaoh hardens. The 5th plague, livestock disease. Egypt's cattle die. Israel's do not. Pharaoh sends officers to verify. He checks. Not one Israelite animal has died. He confirms it with his own investigation. He hardens anyway. The 6th plague, boils. Moses takes ashes from a furnace and throws them into the air before Pharaoh. The ashes become fine dust. The dust becomes boils on every Egyptian and every animal. The magicians, those who are still appearing in the text, cannot even stand before Moses now. They are covered in boils. They disappear from the narrative entirely. They were last seen trying and failing with the gnats. Now they cannot stand up. The contest is over for them, though Pharaoh has not conceded. The 7th plague, hail, the most severe weather event in Egypt's recorded history. God tells Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward heaven." Moses does. Fire runs along the ground inside hail. The flax and barley are struck down. And then this detail, those Egyptians who feared the word of God brought their servants and livestock inside, and they were spared. Those who did not lost everything. Read that again. Some Egyptians feared the word of God, and they survived. The plagues are not indiscriminate. Even among the Egyptians, the response to the word makes a difference. The 8th plague, locusts. Moses stretches out his staff, and an east wind blows all day and all night. By morning, the locusts have come. the worst locust plague in memory, covering the ground so that the earth cannot be seen. And here, for the first time in the sequence, Pharaoh's own officials break with him. They say, "How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the people go." The courtiers have been watching. They have calculated. They are done with this. Pharaoh negotiates and then goes back on it. The ninth plague, darkness. 3 days of choshech, thick darkness, tangible darkness, the Hebrew word suggesting a darkness you can feel with your hands, not just an absence of light, a presence of darkness. Egypt sits in total dark, while Israel has light in their dwellings. The light in Goshen is not explained, it simply is. And in this darkness, Pharaoh calls Moses and gives what seems to be his final offer. He will let everyone go, but the livestock must stay. Moses refuses. Every hoof must go. Pharaoh says, "Get out of my sight." Moses says, "You are right. I will never see your face again." And he leaves. The darkness plague targets the solar gods of Egypt, Ra, Atum, Khepri, the entire pantheon of light, extinguished for 3 days. Not dimmed, extinguished. 3 days of divine light put out, and then restored. 3 days. The number sits there without comment. The 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, is different from every plague before it. Moses does not perform it. He announces it. He tells Pharaoh what is coming. He instructs Israel about the Passover, the lamb, the hyssop, the blood on the doorposts, the unleavened bread, the staff in hand, the loins girded, the posture of departure. And at midnight, the angel of the Lord passes through Egypt. Every firstborn dies, from the firstborn of Pharaoh on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, to the firstborn of the cattle. The only homes untouched are those with blood on the doorpost. The angel sees the blood and passes over. The target of this final plague, Pharaoh himself, who called himself the son of the gods, the living extension of divine power. The death in his own house is the death of the theology that kept Israel enslaved. This miracle is the first in the sequence that does not end with Pharaoh hardening his heart. It ends with him calling Moses at night, broken, saying, "Go, take everything, go, and bless me also." The word he uses, "bless me also," is the word barach, the same word Moses used when he fled from the serpent at the beginning of this story. The circle has begun. The plagues end. Israel leaves Egypt with the wealth of their captors pressed into their hands, and then they walk into the desert. And the miracles do not stop. They change. Something shifts in the character of what happens next. The plagues were acts of judgment, systematic, deliberate, aimed at powers that needed to be dismantled. What happens in the wilderness is something else. The wilderness miracles are acts of provision. The instrument changes, the cost changes, the stakes become personal. The sea, Egypt's army at their backs, 600 chariots with bronze-tipped wheels, the finest military technology of the ancient world, converging on 2 million people who are carrying children and livestock and have nowhere to go. Moses stretches out his hand over the sea. All night, a strong east wind blows. The waters divide, the ground dries, and Israel crosses on dry ground, Yabasha, the same word used in Genesis for the dry land that appeared when the waters were gathered in the beginning. Creation language. The crossing of the sea is described in creation terms. This is not simply an escape. This is a new world being made. The Egyptians follow. The wheels of their chariots get stuck in the mud. The text says the Egyptians said to each other, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them." They turn. They try to go back. Moses stretches out his hand again. The waters return. The entire army is covered. None survived. Israel stands on the opposite shore and sees what has been done. And the text says they feared the Lord and believed in the Lord and in Moses his servant. 2 sentences. 40 years will follow those 2 sentences. But right now, in this moment, they believed. 3 days into the desert, and there is no water. They find water at Marah. They cannot drink it. It is bitter. The word Marah means bitter. The place is named after the problem. And Israel complains. This is the first complaint of the wilderness, and it will not be the last. Moses cries out to God. God shows him a tree, etz, the same word for the tree of life. And Moses throws the tree into the water, and the water becomes sweet. The bitter is made drinkable. And God gives Israel a statute here. If you listen to my voice and keep my commandments, I will not put on you any of the diseases I put on the Egyptians. The healing of the water is not only a survival miracle, it is a covenant offer. There is a detail buried in this text that almost no one notices. The wood makes the bitter water sweet. A tree thrown into poison water makes it clean. The image is alive in the Hebrew imagination, and it does not disappear from the story. The bread from heaven, man who, what is it in Hebrew? The Israelites did not have a word for it. They named it after their confusion. Every morning for 40 years, 6 days out of 7, it appeared on the ground with the dew, thin flakes white like coriander seed, tasting of honey and oil. On the 6th day, a double portion fell, so that Israel would not have to gather on the Sabbath. And on the Sabbath, the ground was bare. The manna stopped exactly on the day Israel ate from the produce of Canaan. To the day, to the morning. Moses does not produce the manna. He announces it. He explains it. He gives the regulations for collecting it. His role in the wilderness provision miracles is different from his role in the plagues. He is no longer the instrument. He is the interpreter. Water again. The people are thirsty again. They use the word riv to contend, to plead a legal case, and the place gets its name, Meribah, the place of contention. God tells Moses, "Walk ahead of the elders, take your staff, the same staff that struck the Nile, and strike the rock at Horeb." Moses does. Water comes out. The staff of judgment becomes the instrument of provision. The instrument of the plagues becomes the source of water in the desert. This detail is not coincidental. And then Amalek. They attack while Israel is weak, striking the stragglers at the back of the column. Moses goes to the top of a hill with the staff of God in his hand. As long as Moses holds up his hands, with the staff above him, Israel prevails. When his arms fall, Amalek prevails. Moses' arms grow heavy. Aaron and Hur sit him on a stone and hold his arms up, one on each side, until sunset. And Joshua defeats Amalek below, while Moses holds the staff above. The man who parted the sea needs 2 men to hold his arms up. The victory depends on the posture of exhaustion sustained. This miracle is not instantaneous. It is held in place by human hands. And then, much later, the most painful moment in Moses' story. 40 years in the wilderness. Numbers 20. The people are thirsty again. Same words, same complaint, same pattern. God tells Moses, "Take the staff, gather the assembly and speak to the rock." Not strike, speak. Moses takes the staff. He gathers the assembly. He says, "Hear now, you rebels. Must we bring water for you out of this rock?" We, not God, we. And then he strikes the rock. Twice, water comes out, abundant water for the people and their livestock. And God says to Moses, "Because you did not trust in me, to uphold my holiness before the people of Israel, you shall not bring this assembly into the land I have given them." The miracle still happens. The water still flows. The people still drink. But the cost has arrived. The usual explanation is that Moses disobeyed by striking instead of speaking. That is true. But the deeper problem is the we. Must we bring water from this rock? Moses placed himself at the center of the miracle. The holiness of God was not upheld. The people did not see what they needed to see, that the water was never from Moses. It never was. And the water still flows anyway. The miracle does not depend on Moses' perfection. It depends on God's. But the fracture is in the accounting, and Moses will carry it to the top of Mount Nebo. But here is the detail that changes everything about this entire list. Numbers 21. Israel is in the desert south of Edom, taking the long route around because Edom refused to let them pass. They are tired. They speak against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in this wilderness? There is no food and no water, and we detest this miserable food. This miserable food, the manna, the bread from heaven, 40 years running, and they call it miserable. Fiery serpents come among the people. Nachash Saraph, the Hebrew word Saraph, the same root as the seraphim in Isaiah, the burning ones, the attendants of the throne. They bite. Many people die. Israel comes to Moses. They say, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us." Moses prays, and here is what God says, not, "I will remove the serpents," not, "You have repented, so the danger ends." God says to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and everyone who is bitten when he sees it shall live." Moses makes a bronze serpent and sets it on a pole. And whenever a serpent bit someone, if that person looked at the bronze serpent, they lived. Look at the wound. Look at the very thing that is killing you. Look at it lifted up and live. This is the last miracle in Moses' ministry, not a plague, not a parting sea, not water from stone. A bronze image of the cause of death raised on a stick, healing the dying through a gaze. In John 3:14, Jesus is speaking to Nicodemus under cover of night. They are talking about being born again, about the Spirit, about eternal life. And Jesus says this, "Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life." Out of 18 miracles, out of the parted sea and the plagues on Egypt, and the manna from heaven and the water from the rock, Jesus chose this one, the bronze serpent, the last miracle, the strangest one, the one almost no one preaches. The image of the cause of death, raised up, turned into the instrument of healing. And he applied it to his own body. He did not choose the sea. He did not choose the manna, though he will elsewhere describe himself as the true bread from heaven. He chose the serpent on the pole. Look at what is killing you, lifted on a cross, and live. Go back now to the beginning of the list. Staff to serpent. A man who reaches down and grabs the dangerous thing by the tail. A man whose hand carries death and is restored. A third sign that pours the sacred water of Egypt onto dry ground as blood. The systematic demolition of every Egyptian god. The water made sweet by a tree. The bread from heaven that will not last beyond the day it is needed. The staff of judgment becoming the instrument of provision, the arms held up by others until sunset, the water still flowing from a rock after the fracture. The sequence was always moving here. The last miracle is not the end of the list. It is the key to reading the whole list from the beginning. Because Jesus did not say, "Moses lifted up the serpent," and that reminds me of something. He said, "Just as Moses lifted up the serpent, so must the Son of Man be lifted up." The same logic, the same mechanics, the same act of looking at the wound. Moses ended his ministry with an image of death on a stick that healed by being seen. 3,000 years later, someone stood in front of a cross and understood what Moses had been pointing at all along. There is one more thing. When Moses dies, on top of Mount Nebo, within sight of the land he will not enter. The text says this, "And there has not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, none like him, for all the signs and the wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of all Israel." Signs and wonders, ot and mophet, both words, together in the obituary. The two categories held together at the end as they were distinguished at the beginning. The text remembered the difference even in the eulogy. But notice what the obituary does not say. It does not say. For all the miracles Moses performed, it says the signs and wonders that the Lord sent him to do. Sent him to do. The agent is named. The miracle worker is clarified one final time. 18 miracles. Not one of them originated with Moses. The staff was already in his hand. He just threw it down. The hand was his own. He just put it in his cloak. The water was from the Nile. He just poured it out. The plagues came from the God who sent them. The sea opened under a wind that blew all night. The manna fell from somewhere no one could see. The water came from the rock. The arms were held up by others. Moses was the instrument through which the argument was made. And the argument, as it turns out, was never about the plagues or the parting sea. It was about a bronze serpent lifted up in the desert, healing the dying by being seen. That is everything the text tells us about the miracles of Moses. Every one of them, in order. 18 miracles. Not one of them was about Moses. If this opens something up for you, share it with someone who needs it. And subscribe. We'll be here.